Hello everyone and welcome back to another Star Wars The Black Series action figure review. Today we're taking a look at a slightly older figure, but one that I've just been able to add to my collection. This is Dok-Ondar from Galaxy's Edge, and if you're even remotely familiar with Black Spire Outpost and the planet of Batuu, then you know that Dok-Ondar is the owner of the Den of Antiquities. He's a bit of a collector like you and I, and this is a figure, like I said, I've just been able to add to my collection despite being made available for a couple of years now. I missed out on this figure's initial release. He was first made available at Galaxy's Edge itself, and here in the UK was offered up via the Disney store. However, at the time of this figure's release, he was very popular, sold out almost instantly, and also the price was really hard to justify at the time. But Star Action Figures, once again, have come to the rescue. They've gotten their hands on some recent exclusives, and this one is currently being offered on their site for an absolute steal of a price. So if you want to add this one to your own collection, be sure to hit the link in the video description. At the time of recording, Dok-Ondar is in stock and available to buy, but due to the low price and due to just how cool this figure is, I really can't see a lot of people sleeping on it, and I think this one will be gone very, very soon. So if you want it, get it. It's a really, really cool figure, definitely one that I'd recommend picking up. Sculpt, articulation, soft goods. Once again, Hasbro are killing it with soft goods, robes and cloaks, and accessories on this figure are really, really well done. And it's just one of those figures where it's just such a weird release that it was irresistible, and I just couldn't not add it to the collection. So I'm very, very happy to finally have this one. Before we dive into the review itself, we are going to take a look at the packaging that this one comes in. It's slightly different to your standard Black Series figure, so let's dive in and take a look. So as you can see, Dok-Ondar does come in this really nice presentation style box, which is very different to what we're used to seeing with Black Series 6-inch figures. On the front of the box we have this absolutely beautiful illustration of the character inside the Den of Antiquities. This is how Dok-Ondar appears at the park. Really, really cool illustration on the front of the box. You've got this sort of panel design going on, the name of the character just up there at the top, and this really cool Ithorian stamp down in the bottom corner, which looks really, really cool. Inside, we do have a flap on the front of the box. We have a brief description of the character on the inside of the flap, and as you can see, being a slightly older release, this figure does come in plastic-free packaging. So inside, unfortunately, there's no window, we just have an image of the figure, but very, very cool nonetheless. This is one of those examples where even if you open up your figures, you can still keep the box pretty much intact, and it's a pretty nice display piece in its own right, to be fair, so I'll definitely be adding this one to my Disney Parks display. Nothing really going on the side of the box. On the back, an image of the figure once again, and then down the side we have a breakdown of the figure, the accessories, and basically the contents of the box. So really, really cool stuff. Once again, that illustration on the front of the box is really, really nice. I do wish that there was a Velcro pad just to seal the box. Unfortunately, it's just taped down, and once you slice that tape, the panel sort of springs out, but that's easily fixed once you reseal it. But yeah, very, very cool packaging. Like I said, I'll be keeping this as a display piece for my Disney Parks display. But yeah, really, really cool stuff despite being plastic free. So with packaging aside, let's dive into this review and take a look at Dok-Ondar himself. And here he is out of the box, and I've got to say, this is an absolutely incredible figure. I'm so thrilled to finally have this guy in the collection. Despite being a couple of years old, Hasbro really have gone to town on this figure, and it is once again another prime example of some of their best work. Sculpt wise, detail wise, paint applications especially are really, really good with this one, and the soft goods really does have to be commended. Again, I can't stress enough, Hasbro are doing their best work with soft goods at the moment, and this one is no exception. Now what's interesting to point out is that this figure is our first example of a Black Series Ithorian. He did precede the Momo Naden figure that we got from A New Hope, and as such there are some differences between the two figures. I honestly thought that when Momo Naden was released that there'd be a lot of reuse from this figure, but it's surprising just how many new parts were made for the Hammerhead figure that came out more recently. That's not to say that this figure isn't really nicely sculpted though. The head sculpt especially is absolutely amazing, and the paint applications on this one really go a long way to bring that head sculpt to life. You've got all these different tones in terms of the complexion, which really bring out some of those details. And yeah, it's just a really nicely put together figure. Absolutely thrilled with this one. As you can see, if we come around the back of the neck, got all these different textures. I don't want to say boils and warts and insult the guy, but he definitely needs a better skincare routine because there's something going on back there. But again, the paint applications really go a long way to bring out all this detail on the neck itself. You've obviously got those notorious Ithorian throats on the side of his head there. And again, different paint applications to really bring out the details in that head sculpt on the front of the head, which look really, really nice. Really good textures, really good paint apps, just awesome stuff. I'm a huge fan of Black Series aliens. Hasbro really do knock it out of the park when they offer up different species in the 6-inch scale, and again, this figure's no exception. Now, I will be honest, this review, in comparison to some of my other reviews, is going to be a little bit lazy because I know there is a ton of articulation to point out on this guy, and quite honestly, it's difficult to really showcase it when the plastic and soft goods robes are in effect. And I'm not going to derobe this guy just because I really don't fancy the hassle of trying to remove all the different robes and accessories on this figure. There are plenty of reviews out there that break this one down in greater detail when it comes to articulation. Landspeeder Luke, the Forces with Jesse, Mike Case, the Fwoosh. There's a ton of guys out there who've really gone to town on the details underneath the robes on this figure. So I'm not going to do that for the purposes of this review, just because, like I said, I don't fancy the hassle, and quite honestly, I can't be bothered. So you're just going to get a basic breakdown of this guy. I will go into detail about the articulation on him, but quite honestly, I just wanted to give you a look at this figure because I really do believe it deserves showing off. He is an absolutely stellar addition. Now, in terms of articulation, even though this figure was released a couple of years ago, he comes with all the articulation and poseability that you'd expect. Obviously, due to some of these soft goods and plastic robes, certain articulation points are slightly hindered, but I don't feel that that's a detriment to the figure itself. For the most part, you're going to have this guy stood in a very stoic pose. He's not going to be going toe-to-toe with stormtroopers. You're not going to need to get this one in battle poses. So honestly, he does what he needs to do, and the hindrance to the articulation really doesn't take away from this one, in my opinion. But he does have a ball joint at the head, and the ball joint is really nice and fluid. It's a big ball joint at the base of the neck where the head meets the torso, and you can get a really nice fluid range of movement out of the head itself. He can look up, down, all around, does everything that he needs to do. We have butterfly joints at the shoulders and ball hinges at the elbows and wrists. There is a ball joint at the torso, however, again, due to the plastic robe, you're not going to get a lot of range out of that, which again, is absolutely fine. We also have ball hinges at the hips, once again, plastic robe, hindrance. You're not going to get a wide stance out of this figure, but that's by the by for me personally, not a really big issue. He can still display really well on the shelf. We have the swivel cut at the upper thigh as well, a hinge in the knee, and ball joints, or ball hinges should I say, and the rocker at the ankle. So essentially, as long as this guy can stand up and look the part, I'm fine with the articulation being slightly interrupted, shall we say, by all the accoutrement on this figure. But like I said, I think if you're picking this figure up, you're really picking him up for his appearance and his aesthetic, and he definitely fits the bill and ticks all the boxes in that respect. He's really well painted, really well sculpted, and just an absolutely fantastic addition to the collection. I'm off to Galaxy's Edge in February 2026, and I just can't wait to see this guy in action at the Den of Antiquities, you know, and compare the sort of the animatronic to the action figure and say, oh, look at that, all the details are there that's on the figure, and oh, it's going to be such a cool experience. Really can't wait to visit Galaxy's Edge. It's definitely a bucket list trip that I can't wait to make. But yeah, really cool figure from Black Spire Outpost. Now again, going back to the overall appearance of the figure and the way that Hasbro have executed this one, the soft goods once again really has to be commended. Even though this figure was released in 2023, it's another great example of Hasbro's stellar work they're doing with soft goods at the moment. You've got this really nice fabric that creates this this white robe. It's sort of a thin cotton material, but it drapes over the figure really well. Hasbro for the longest time have had a bit of an issue when it comes to soft goods and getting them to look natural and flow nicely, but this one really looks good. Really can't complain about that too much at all. It looks fantastic. Made out of a really premium fabric. Just looks great. And even the hood drapes over the back of the figure really nicely as well. The plastic robe, as you can see, is really nicely sculpted. You've got all these tattered and frayed edges. Got this sort of shawl across the chest, which again is really nicely sculpted. You've got all these different details going on there. Nice sculpted textures in the plastic robe itself. And this necklace, which is a separate piece, as you can see, it drapes around the neck nicely, but that is really nicely sculpted. Such intricate details on there. All these little trinkets, keys, collectibles. Awesome stuff. Like I said, the real selling point on this figure is just how he looks, and he looks amazing. Really does not disappoint. Now he does come with an absolute ton of accessories, and I can't wait to showcase these because they are very cool. I think in terms of accessories, this is probably the best Black Series action figure we've seen since the San Diego Comic-Con Grand Admiral Throne was released several years ago. So let's dive into it and take a look at what this figure comes with. So first up we have a Phase 1 Clone Trooper helmet, which as you can see has been given a really heavy, dirty wash. This is obviously to reflect that by this point in the Star Wars timeline, a Phase 1 Clone Trooper helmet would be considered somewhat of an antiquity, and the paint applications really do go a long way to sort of bring that to life and reflect the age of the helmet. It is, from a sculpt point of view, the same as the one included with the recent Phase 1 Clone Trooper figure, so you know what to expect in terms of sculpted details. It is a hollow helmet, so it can be added to a figure, and it's great customizer fodder. Also making their Black Series debut are the Jedi and Sith holocrons, which for accessories of this size are really nicely sculpted and painted. They're cast in this sort of semi-translucent plastic and given gold painted accents, and each holocron has its own sculpted details that don't really stand out all that well on camera but look great in person, and I'm thrilled to see these brought to life in the Black Series 6-inch scale. What is really cool about these accessories as well is that if you don't want to display them with Dok-Ondar, there are a ton of different characters already available in the Black Series that these accessories can interact with. And finally, we have the Sword of Kashyyyn, which I'm hoping I haven't butchered the pronunciation of, but this is basically a Disney-created prop for the Galaxy's Edge attraction, but the lore of this weapon has been sort of expanded upon in the Galaxy's Edge comic series. From what I understand, it's an ancient Sith artifact that has found its way into the collection of Dok-Ondar and into the Den of Antiquities. It's a pretty basic accessory. It is, for all intents and purposes, just a sword, but there are some really nice sculpted details on the hilt, some nice paint applications, and it's a really cool accessory in its own right. What I really wouldn't mind doing at some point in the future is investing in some 3D printed accessories to really display these accessories really well. Landspeeder Luke has put together a file for basically a Den of Antiquities countertop, which really allows you to display these accessories really nicely, and that's something that I might look into in the future. Although, as you can see, he does hold the accessories quite well. You do have to sort of precariously balance the holocrons between Dok-Ondar's fingers, but from a display perspective, it looks absolutely fine. He's unlikely to take a tumble off your shelf, as he stands pretty well unaided, so there's no worry of that Jedi holocron or the Sith holocron disappearing off into the ether. And yeah, like I said, from a visual standpoint, and thanks to all the accessories that this figure does come with, there are a multitude of ways to display this figure on the shelf. Although, like I said, and I'm going to emphasise again, I do recommend checking out Landspeeder Luke's 3D printed files of the Den of Antiquities itself. That would make a great addition to this figure. I think this would have been a prime candidate for a deluxe release had an accessory like that been included. But yeah, really happy with this figure, thrilled with how he turned out. Accessories are fantastic, sculpt is great, and definitely a worthy addition to the Black Series collection. So that concludes this review on Dok-Ondar from the Black Series. Once again, an absolutely fantastic figure. I do apologise that I wasn't able to go into more detail about the articulation. Underneath the robes, there's not a whole lot going on in terms of sculpted detail. Like I said, there are tons of reviews out there that really go into the specifics of what lies underneath Dok-Ondar's robes, if that's what you're into. But for the most part, you know, if you buy this figure, this is how he's going to be displayed on the shelf, and I couldn't be happier with how this figure looks. Like I said, paint applications are absolutely fantastic on this one. The soft goods are really nicely done, and just the overall aesthetic and execution of this figure really is a great example, once again, of Hasbro's best work. They're killing it with the Black Series at the moment. This figure is no exception, and once again, if you'd like to purchase this one for yourself, make sure you hit the link down below in the video description, as he is available for an absolute steal. I'll be back with many more reviews very soon. Until then, as always, thank you for tuning in, keep collecting, and may the Force be with you.